This interview is part of the Create Resilience project. Could you introduce yourself, Pam, and tell us about your role and how the project, how it got started?
Sure. I'm Pamela Taylor. I chair the Shade Tree Commission for Wilson Borough. And that all began in 2013. Our Shade Tree Commission ordinance had been laying dormant for a good quarter of a century. And I felt that we really needed to get something going because I was noticing that our borough was becoming barren, denuded. And of course, we were seeing the effects of that with increased heat and emissions that weren't getting processed. And so the first step was to get that ordinance back functioning again. And that's where we started.
So how did the process go for introducing the ordinance, and was there the Shade Tree Commission do it collectively, and how was that process initiated and received?
Well, the Shade Tree Commission that consists of 3 people who are volunteers. I act as the liaison between the commission and the council. I'm also a member of the council. So I presented an updated ordinance to council after having conferred with an arborist and with our engineers for the borough. And then, it was approved by council. And at that point, that made it possible for us to start enacting it again. And it gave guidance to the residents for how to handle their street trees, and gave them something to work with so that they understood about the care of the trees in front of their homes. In order to be able to get rolling again, I didn't want to impact negatively the residents and their pocketbooks. So we applied for grants, and in 2017, we received our first Tree Vitalize grant. What came before that was a few years of groundwork. We needed to do a full tree inventory so that we knew what we were starting with. We needed to confer with the engineers and the arborists to sort out a plan how to get this started, because so much of our borough had been, had trees taken down and nothing replacing them, and stumps remaining too. So there was a lot of legwork to do to get things kind of rolling again. And we also needed to connect with volunteers and get the support of our public works department and pull everybody together to be able to have a concrete project that would make a concrete difference.
And can you tell us about the site and the area that you selected, what it was like before the project began, and some of the actual physical work that happened and how that was carried out?
Sure. We decided to go first off with the most traveled roads, with Northampton Street, which runs through the town, and also with starting a little bit on 25th Street and Butler. Those are kind of they kind of form a triangle almost around the borough. And those are the ones that if you don't live in the borough and are just passing through, those are the main roads that you're going to be taking. And those were also the ones that were most impacted by having trees come down and not be replaced. So we had the dual challenge of having the barest roads be our biggest roads. So where the most emissions are happening, that's where we have no trees. So we started with that, thinking that it would be a much more visible impact for everyone, anybody who lives in the borough and also the people passing through. And it would also make a larger impact on our problems of balancing and trying to get clean air and cooler air. So we started with those 3 and a little bit in. We have a boulevard that is lovely. It's Washington Boulevard. It has a nice little median that runs along it. And there we just put in a couple of trees to replace some that had come down over the years. It's a nicely treated area, but it just seemed like that was something we wanted to maintain as the focal point of the borough. So that's where we began. And we started by planting 100 trees.
And that engaged community volunteers as well as the borough staff?
Yes, we had Public Works helped us by digging holes, because we were using large bucketed trees. So they helped us with using machines to dig the holes. And they also helped us with doing all of the one calls to UGI. And the engineers helped us with the plans and also with the grant application. And then we brought the community in for the actual tree planting, which was a lot of fun. We had Boy Scout troops and we had Girl Scout troops. And we actually also had probationers come in from Easton, and they were some of the most hardworking volunteers and the most enthusiastic volunteers of the entire day. And so between them and the troops and just general people from the borough coming out, we had 50 to 60 volunteers, which made very quick work of the planting on the day.
So they were all planted on one day. You did all 100 on one day?
Yes.
That was a big day. And has there been subsequent planting since then? Has this an initiative that continues to grow since then?
Yes, we also did the same for 18 and 19. And this year we didn't get the full Tree Vitalize grant, but we did get a bare root grant. So we were planning to do that in April, but obviously we could have done it, but we wouldn't have been able to have volunteers be involved. And because it's such an important part of our mission, I decided that we should file for an extension. So we have applied to extend that grant into the fall so we can plant hopefully in September and then have everybody together to enjoy the process.
Did you along the way come across any obstacles or unexpected challenges in this that you had to work around?
Absolutely. The biggest obstacle, in some ways, was surprising to me, but in other ways, not so much, was the then perceived ideas of the residents as to what this would mean. There was a lot of jumping to conclusions of, oh, this is going to cost me. Well, no, I don't want the residents to have to pay for all the neglect that occurred over that 25, 26 years. And that's why we apply for the grants on an annual basis. They were also concerned that the trees that would be planted would be like the ones that were planted 60 to 100 years ago, which we're looking at mostly maples, Norway and sugar maples. And they're way too big for this very congested community. They also thought these are messy, and that they would be a lot of work. So we did a lot of education. We have a Shade Tree Commission Facebook page, and we also have a tab on the borough website, and we put flyers. And so we keep informing the public that we are planting with care. We are planting with keeping in mind the overhead wires. We're keeping in mind the very small space between the curb and the sidewalk. And we're also keeping in mind that messy sense of things. We're thinking of trees that aren't going to be dropping, slippery fruits or anything going to cause a hazard for people walking on the sidewalk. And over time, we've had people reach out directly with questions, and I've always been so happy when that happens because it's yet another chance to educate. And then they go home and they talk to their neighbors, and it spreads out. So in the first year, we had a lot of resistance. And I've noticed over the years that now it's becoming a thing. It's becoming, this is our borough, and this is something that's better for our boroughs. Where we had previously been seeing negative posts on Facebook, we're starting to see a much more positive slant to it.
Excellent. And physically, the streetscape now and the situation of the streets, what is the transformation that you're seeing a couple of years after this has been started?
Well, this is a definitely long-term project. We started with a 17.45% tree canopy. Average for our type of borough is 25, and the forestry would like to see it at 45. So this is definitely a long-term project. When we're planting young trees, it's not immediately increasing our canopy percentage right off the bat because they're small. And so we have to wait for them to grow. So my thought is, every year that we plant a new crop of trees, the other ones that we previously planted are continuing to grow and continuing to increase the canopy. So at this point, it is a small gain each year, but I know that over the years it's going to be much better. And our goal is initially to reach that average and to continue to go to the recommendation of 45%.
So as we described, the project that we're doing, Create Resilience, is looking to create a community vision of resilience in each of these areas. Can you just reflect for a minute in a summary sort of way on the ways in which you think that this tree planting project will contribute to the resilience of the Wilson area in the years coming forward?
I think that anytime you draw a community together to give something of themselves to their own environment, that creates a sense of ownership. It creates a sense of responsibility to their surroundings, not just to their own little corner of their property, but also to the entire borough. I think that's a powerful thing. That makes it possible for people to not just look at the trees as part of something that they have control over and that they can do something about, but that extends to all facets of living and to keeping an eye on the neighborhood, make sure everybody in your neighborhood is doing okay. Picking up litter, even if you didn't drop it. Those little tiny things bring us together and make us realize that we're not so different from each other, and we can feel good together and feel like we're part of a unit. I think that the volunteering for this is also a chance for neighbors to come together who might not have had a chance to really get to know each other. So as they're planting, they're having chit chat, small talk, and that might create a relationship that becomes a long-lasting one. So both in interpersonal relationships and also in their sense of what the community is. I think this annual event, really creates a strong, strong bond.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any future expansions of the program that we should look forward to or changes coming forward?
Definitely. We're going to continue to do Tree Vitalize every year that they're willing to give us money. And we are also doing, we started a program with Lehigh Valley Greenways mini grant program, and it also needs to be extended because of our isolation. But for the our project from 19 to 20 has been incorporating a couple of things. I have a student who is working on his Eagle project, and he decided he would do something to beautify the Wilson bike path. And so he's going to be planting trees and shrubbery and perennials in a nice landscape for a portion of the bike path this year. And we're also going to have the high school students, art students joining us. They will be submitting art designs, and the ones that are chosen will be used to paint our benches. So we'll have this little artsy kind of, I guess, our own little version of the arts trail starting on the Wilson bike path. So I do expect there's probably going to be at least between 10 and 20 trees going in with that project, as well as some shrubbery and perennials.
Excellent, great. Is there anything else we should know? You've given us a beautiful summary of a project that's going to cool the Wilson Borough and beautify the Wilson Borough all at the same time.
I think that's we just are going to continue down this path, working with our grants so that our residents aren't impacted in a heavy way and instead get to enjoy the positive aspect of it. And as of next year, we're going to start working inward a little bit into the side streets, because we've done a pretty good job of covering the main thoroughfares. So now we're going to work our way inward to places that have become a little spotty and start to fill those in. But yeah, it's just going to keep on going until we reach that goal of 45.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you doing the work, first and foremost, as a resident of the area. But thank you for your time and telling us also